Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome to the first episode of what I'm calling the NUFC Monday Show. Aptly, if not creatively named, but it does exactly what it says on the tin. Every Monday, I'll be here 5 o'clock talking about the latest in NUFC news, giving my thoughts on transfer rumours, any insight that I have. If you want to know more about the plans I have over the summer for the channel, please go and check out yesterday's update explaining what I'm hoping to do over the summer in terms of NUFC content, in terms of Euro 2024 content as well. And there's a couple of other things as well that I'm wanting to do, bringing guests on board to talk about various different things, having interviews on the channel as well, just broadening and diversifying the content. But straight into it this week, and first of all, we're going to open with a non-transfer story. Amanda Staveley, the co-owner, has come out on Instagram and defended the club's position in terms of going to Australia for that post-season tour last week. Played Spurs at the MCG and drew 1-1 with Alexander Isak, Joe Linton, Bruno Guimaraes playing in that game. And then an under-21 side were beaten 8-0 by the A-League All-Stars. Yeah, this is a very interesting one because it seems to suggest that Staveley herself was disagreeing with the decision to go, but the management made the choice. The fact that she's mentioned management in there is an interesting thing in itself because obviously as a co-owner she's on the board. She should have a say. Everybody's aware that it's all for money. But to be honest, I think really it didn't really need to be said. I think that I think a lot of the conversation had moved on. I think people were. I think a lot of the negativity had dissipated because it had happened. I think people have moved themselves on there, looking at transfer rumours, the Euros, looking at the new season. Things are moving on. So I think there's no real need to comment on it. If she hadn't said anything, it would have just gone away. It was going away anyway. And I think, yeah, a poor decision and a poor mention, but also worth mentioning that she, in the first draft of her Instagram post, she said that her and Mehrdad Qadusi were out in Monaco talking to a potential sponsor. That mysteriously disappeared in the second viewing of that Instagram post. So whether that means anything, I'm not too sure. I just think the whole thing was a little bit pointless, a little bit silly, not particularly needed, and yeah, it's just brought up old wounds again that were already healing, and I think everybody should just move on now. The first name to mention in this week's video is Giorgi Mamardashvilli of Valencia, the goalkeeper who made his 100th appearance for Valencia, joined the club in January 2022, to become a real key target for Newcastle moving into the summer window. It's very, very interesting to see how prominent a goalkeeper is in terms of the targets this summer, given that Nick Pope's back. I think that the perception of the goalkeeper situation has changed a little bit since January when goalkeepers were mentioned. Aaron Ramsdale's been named a long, long time. Then you've got James Trafford from Burnley as well. He's also been named as well. But I think previously it's been in terms of replacing Nick Pope with a goalkeeper who can use his feet a bit better. Now, I think since Nick Pope's been out, and Martin Dubravka came in and quite frankly cost Newcastle quite a few points at the end of last season, I think the perception has swung around a little bit, given that him and Loris Karius are likely to leave in the summer. Newcastle need more depth, more quality, and they want as much competition in goal as they would have at centre-back or in centre midfield, at left wing, anywhere else in the pitch. I think there's been a little bit of a shift in terms of not just replacing Pope with a better goalkeeper in terms of with their feet, but also just creating competition and having somebody challenge Pope, and whether they start ahead or sit on the bench, a player who can come in for Pope if not there, or just create competition and create a different dynamic in goal, because obviously Dubravka's performances were poor at the end of last season. Loris Karius isn't fancied. Mark Gillespie's never going to play in the Premier League if Newcastle can help it. So there needs to be a change in something in goal. And Mamardashvilli is a really good goalkeeper. He's highly rated. He's been linked with Inter to replace Andre Onana, who obviously joined Manchester United last year. So that's a really interesting signing if Newcastle can pull it off. 35 million. Preliminary talks have opened up. He is becoming their main target. I think it's a good move. It'll be very interesting to see if they can pull it off. But this is definitely a goer, given that Newcastle have sort of changed their tactic with the goalkeeper situation. I've spoken to people around Martin Dubravka quite a few years now. I think he will push for a move over the summer. It's never really been ruled out to me that he'll push for a move, and I think now is the time. It benefits everybody if Dubravka leaves this summer. I think that'll happen, and then Mamardashvilli hopefully is the man to come in and replace him. Aaron Ramsdale's name is still buzzing around. James Trafford as well. 35 million is the targeted price, but if they get it done before the Euros, it'll probably be cheaper because he's in action for Georgia for the first time for Georgia for, I think, possibly even in their entire history. Certainly in a long, long time that Georgia are competing in a tournament, and he'll be hoping to be a star. I'm sure he will be. Another update on Tosin, Adarabioyo and Lloyd Kelly. I gave you one video a couple of weeks ago. Very, very interesting to see how this one plays out. Things really changed with Kelly. I think he's all set to join. I think that's a race that Newcastle won quite a while ago. I mentioned in that video that those conversations were going on since February. Tosin Adarabioyo is a little bit more complicated given the situation with Manchester United, who have been linked and are still interested. That's not just my information, that's been reported by the brilliant Simon Stone at BBC Sport with Nazar Kinsella, and also Mark Douglas in the Eye today reporting that Chelsea are keeping an eye on Tosin as well. So Newcastle have some way to go. They're still ahead in the race, is my understanding. If you read the reports, it's still all about Manchester United being interested in a move, Chelsea looking at possibly making a move, whereas Newcastle have had talks with Tosin's people, still in the driver's seat. There's still, though, some way to go before they can announce Tosin and be confident that he's going to be signing for them. But certainly one to watch, and it'll be very interesting to see how that one goes and where it goes from here. But all of this really stems from the situation with the director of football. I think I said in a video a few weeks ago that Dougie Freedman was their number one target in Newcastle for a director of football to replace Dan Ashworth. Since then, it's been a bit of a mess because he's reportedly turned them down now, and then Newcastle having to move on. Johannes Spors, the director of football for the 777 group, is also supposedly on the list, but Newcastle aren't exactly rushing to appoint him, so perhaps something's changed there. It's all gone a little bit quiet, admittedly, on my end in terms of the director of football. I think Newcastle are going to plan ahead to go into the summer with Steve Nixon, the head of recruitment, and the board, Eddie Howe. There will be no director of football in place by the time the summer window rolls around, and it kicks off on June the 14th. So I highly doubt someone will be in by then. I do have faith that Newcastle are going to be in a very sound position because Steve Nixon's worked on deals before. He was key for the Bruno deal, he was key for the Isak deal and the Botman deal. Eddie Howe, as I've mentioned on this channel before, is very, very prominent with British signings and Premier League experience. So those things haven't really been affected by Dan Ashworth's departure. They haven't really been affected by the lack of incoming from Dougie Freedman. But it is a massive shame that Freedman isn't coming in because, as I outlined in the video a couple of weeks ago, I think he is the ideal man, and Newcastle do have to go back to the drawing board in terms of where they go next when it comes to a director of football. And finally, the last name I want to mention is a very interesting one, the situation with Yankuba Minteh. The fact that he's coming back from his loan at Feyenoord will be very, very interesting to watch. Eddie Howe is keen to get an eye on him and watch how he's developed. He's had a brilliant season out in Holland, scoring double figures in goals in the Eredivisie, really impressing, playing in the Champions League at the age of 19. He's really caught the eye, but he won't be ready for Newcastle to start for Newcastle next season. And the question is whether sitting on the bench and coming and having an impact is really ideal for his development. We know that Feyenoord are keen to keep him, despite the fact that they've lost manager Arne Slot to Liverpool. Everton been linked by the Daily Mail this week as well. Could a Premier League loan be ideal to sort of for the next stage of his development, or could a sale with a buyback clause be ideal as well? Manchester City have been known to do that. Chelsea have been known to do that in the past. I don't think that that's on the cards. I don't think that that's going to happen yet. Nothing's in no wheels are in motion, but it's certainly an option. And I do think the reason I'm mentioning Minteh's name is because I think nothing is off the table. I think it's not guaranteed that Yankuba Minteh comes back and just slots in at Newcastle. Newcastle are looking for a first choice right wing in the summer. It's been a long-term target for them. Miguel Almiron's been linked with a move away this summer. I expect him to go. My information is that he's not keen on a move to Saudi Arabia, but open to offers from elsewhere. Minteh's choice are either sit on a bench at Newcastle or go out or go away and develop further. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Minteh come summer. I think Eddie Howe at first will want to have a look at him, see where he is, and then a decision will be made. It really suggests that we get ready for anything, because anything's possible with that deal, I think, because his situation is so unknown. Thank you very much for joining me on my very first episode of the NUFC Monday Show. I'll be back next week, every week at 5 o'clock, with a roundup of all the news, with a little bit of my info, a little bit of my insight. I'm not somebody who's promising to know everything, but if I know anything, I'll bring it to you here first. There'll be plenty more content for the Euro, in terms of build up to the Euro 2024 coming up as well. I want, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I want to get some guests on as well. So there's plenty of exciting stuff happening on the channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.